So if your battery's been getting kind of weak and it's been a few years since you've replaced it, might be time to replace it. So that's what I'm going to do today on my 06 Heritage Softail. Thought I'd make a quick video just to show folks how to change it, just in case anyone needed some information on how to do that. First thing you need to do is get access to your battery. The battery's underneath the seat, and there's different kinds of seats, but they should all come off pretty easily. My seat's all one piece here. There's just a few screws. You got one screw here in the back, and you should be able to loosen it with your fingers. If not, grab a large screwdriver. If you have to use a screwdriver and you're worried about your screwdriver slipping off, scratching your paint, put a little piece of masking tape over the screwdriver. Kind of a little tip there so you're not scratching things up. But and then there's a screw, one on each side underneath the seat. This one here, the one that's got a slot for a flat screwdriver. Just pop that screw off, the one on the other side and the one in the back. And then it should come right off of there. And the screws won't come all the way out. They're captive, meaning that they're retained in there. They're on a little spring. So now that you have access to your battery, have a look at it. I have several wires going into my battery, which is probably why these batteries get used up pretty quick. These batteries aren't very big. And my battery has several wires going into it. There's also like a spacer here. That spacer is just so the main wire can come in and bolt to the battery. It takes up that gap there between the terminal and the edge of the battery. But I've got wires coming in. One of them is my battery tender wire, so I can charge my bike up here from the outside, you know, in the wintertime or when I'm not riding. But there's other things that use battery power. I have a little speaker that has an amp. And I think most of these Harleys have some sort of security system from the factory that they're also wired in there. But that's what most of those wires are. Going to have to just, you know, get a good hold on this battery and lift it up as much as we can. We're only going to be able to lift it up maybe 3 or 4 inches due to all the wires, but that'll be enough to allow us to get the terminals loose. And you just take the bolts out, and be careful not to lose these spacers, because I don't think the new battery will come with those. And also don't drop the little nuts in there, or the bolt, any washers you might have. Don't drop that stuff down in your bike. You don't want that stuff rattling around in your bike for the rest of its life. All right, let's go ahead and pull it out of there. All right, looks like I've got at least three, maybe 4 wires going into each terminal. So just take note of that, so you kind of know what orientation they're in. Look for any damaged wires that may need some attention. I'm going to take the black one off first, just because it's a good practice when doing any battery work to take off your negative. First, now don't lose your hardware. Once you get it loose, just use your fingers. Okay. Got my spacer off. Got the bolt. All right, that one's good. Now that the battery's disconnected from the bike, you can do your positive wire. Taking that off. Okay, now that I'm all loose, I should be able to pull my battery out. There it goes. And let's not lose this hardware here. This positive one has got lots going on here. All right, so go ahead and get yourself a new battery, and batteries are different. Some of the maybe more expensive batteries are already pre-filled with acid, and some of them maybe even pre-charged. But a lot of in the motorsports industry, you know, motorcycles, dirt bikes, ATVs, a lot of times when you buy a battery, it needs to be filled with acid, which it usually comes with. If it doesn't come with acid, you can buy it at places like AutoZone and whatnot. But first thing we need to do is go ahead and fill the battery with the acid per the instructions. I've already read through the instructions on this one. You just pretty much peel off the foil that seals these fill ports on the battery, and the fill ports have kind of self-piercing sort of studs in there that will be used to pierce the foil caps on the battery acid. So on the battery acid, you just take off the plastic covering. There will be foil caps. Leave those alone. Do not peel those off. Otherwise, it's pretty much impossible to fill this without spilling. But right now, you know, with the foil on there, you can turn it upside down. You put it on the battery. There's, again, self-piercing things in there, and you just push it down until it pierces that foil, and you'll see the air bubbles start to come. That means that acid's going down in the battery. And the instructions say to kind of leave it about 20 minutes or so, which should give it enough time to fill up. And we'll just go ahead and wait that time and check back in. Okay, once the acid is fully drained in there and your battery has been sitting the prescribed amount of time per the instructions, go ahead and take your cap, and it's what seals your battery up. We'll put it back into place here. And just press it on there evenly. Once you're satisfied that that cap's on there, well, make sure it's on there good. That's the only thing that keeps your acid in there, but it's a tight seal. Go ahead and charge your battery. Your instructions will say approximately how long to charge the battery. You're supposed to use a smaller sort of trickle charger. You know, of course, black is negative, red's positive. And for me, I'm going to charge this for several hours, even overnight. Now I'm looking at my battery, I'm looking at the hardware that it came with versus what the old battery had. Now my battery, or my bike I should say, you know, it had that little spacer and it had 3 or 4 different wires coming in. So there's no way I could put all that stuff on with this short bolt that it came with. So I'm going to use the old longer bolts that was on the bike. I've cleaned them up a little bit with the wire brush so they look to be in good shape. And then also the little nuts that it came with are pretty narrow. They would work fine going in here, but they'd be just a little bit harder to keep them retained in there versus the old ones that are a lot wider that take up kind of that whole gap. I just feel like the old ones are going to do better for me, so I'm going to stick with those. Make sure they're cleaned up and corrosion free. I've done that. I've already charged the battery overnight with just a battery tender, and I'm ready to put this thing in. Putting the battery in by yourself is a bit of a challenge, so I went ahead and put the nuts inside the terminal posts here, and I put a little bit of masking tape just to prevent those nuts from falling out, since I'll be doing it kind of one-handed. If you have a helper to hold the battery in there, you probably don't need to do that, but a little tip there, and then you can pull that masking tape off later. Also, if your battery happens to have a sticker on it somewhere that shows the year it was manufactured, it's usually stuck on the side. You'll never see it once the battery's down in the bike. If you have one, peel it off and stick it on the top somewhere. My battery doesn't have one, but some of them do, especially in cars they do. All right, have a look at your wires now that you have access. If you have any light corrosion, go ahead and get some sandpaper, clean that up. Mine's pretty good, but I'll go ahead and clean it up a little bit while I'm in here. Wire brush might work too. All right, let's get started, and be real careful not to drop the spacers or the hardware down in there, because it's a nightmare to try to find that stuff. If you have any debris or anything down in your battery tray, go ahead and get a shop vac or something and clean that up. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and gather up the wires on each side and take a little zip tie here and put through there just so I don't lose them. Make sure they're all together. So sometimes when you put the battery down in there, you could accidentally catch one of these wires and bury it. You won't see it. So I'm just gonna tie them together. I've already done the positives here as well. That way they're nice and neat. And when I put my battery down in there, they should stay together pretty good. So now I should be able to put my battery down in there. Here we go. Let's see if I can keep some of these wires tucked out of the way. Yeah, something like that. Now I've got my battery in there. I got my wires all together. So now it's just a matter of putting the bolts in there. So we're gonna do it one side at a time, and I'll do actually do the positive side first. And make sure these negatives, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of tuck them out of the way so they don't accidentally make contact. I mean, should be able to get these wires, cut the zip tie off. Get my bolt in there. Make sure you get the right bolt. If you need the longest one, get the longest one. Oh, I'm missing one here. I was missing one. Found it though. All right, that's a whole lot of positive wires, but that's what my bike had, and I'm not changing anything. I maybe should take this opportunity to remove some stuff that I don't really use. I don't really use the little LED lights and stuff like that, but I'll go ahead and put it back together how it was. Okay, now I got the bolt in here. If you had a helper, now would be the time to use that person to lift this up as you bolt it together, but I got to get my spacer in there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and lift this battery. Okay, kind of use one hand here and get this spacer on there without losing it, hopefully. Yep. And get that bolted down, or at least started. All right, it's started. Alrighty. Okay, that's tight. Okay. Should be able to cut the zip tie off now and get your bolt in there. Okay, and I got my spacer here. Once I can lift this battery up with one hand, put that spacer on and get that bolt started. Okay, there it goes. It's started now, just need to get it tight. Okay, I think my battery's in there tight now. I can take off the masking tape. Make sure you're happy with the tightness. Yep. And make sure you're happy with the kind of final routing of the wiring you got. and you should be able to go ahead and put your seat back on. Put the seat back on. Careful not to scratch anything. Kind of like to get my back one started, just so, because it can scratch the back fender if you're, finagling it. So let's get that one started loose, and then you can get your side ones started. That battery replacement wasn't too bad. Definitely doable yourself. I'm going to go ahead and check my bike now. Turn it on. Sounds fine. Definitely has a lot of power for that starter. So it was a successful job. Now, another tip: go ahead and write down somewhere in your owner's manual or your maintenance records the date that you changed the battery. That way, next time you're wondering about your battery life, you can check out how old it is.